And we're up and running. It's a beautiful day in the Midwest, and yesterday we had some pretty serious storms come through the region, so we're now watching everything settle down again. And that's very much like our lives, you know. We get pulled over for that speeding ticket, and all of a sudden the cop calls his buddies over, and, you know, the next thing you know, you're involved in a cavity search. But it all eventually calms down, and that's the purpose of A Course in Miracles. How are you this morning, Barrett?
I'm pretty good. I'm just hoping that my cavity searches are you know, they're only in the dentist chair. So that's my hope.
Yes, I think that's something that we want to affirm frequently, that nothing go awry when it comes to our personal space. Isn't it funny how we get so wound up in our little bodies, and it's like, you can't look there, don't look at me, you know, much less touch me. So that's sensitivity, and God is having a good chuckle in the greater space and time of all of this nonsense.
It's true. It's true. This crazy world just keeps on happening, and like you said up front, the storms kind of keep moving through too, and they move through in their own time, in their own space. And I was just talking with someone last night about this, about how, you know, metaphorically, there are times where we are able to get indoors before the storm hits, and then there are those times in our life where we kind of just have to take cover and wait for the storm to move through. But we can start doing that more and more from a place of peacefulness and from a place of unattachment. So even if we are having our cavities searched, however that might be occurring, we can actually do that from a place of peace. And I agree that might not be the norm, but it is a good goal to have. I think it's something that we can, you know, we can start to have in our lives more and more. So it sounds pretty good.
Absolutely. You get out there, and when the real serious storms hit, you have that beautiful experience of getting drenched. And, you know, the idea of purification, boy, a good summer rainstorm does have that effect of purifying us and washing us clean of all of our dust and dirt that we have picked up on our journey. So storms are a good thing.
Yeah, I really do like that metaphor. There was another one that was sort of like that. A few years ago, I was driving with my friend Jason, who you know, and we were coming back. I don't remember even where we were coming back from, but it was in the winter, and there was a big snowstorm that hit, and our experience was that the snow was like a cleansing snow. It was like the symbol of purity. So even though we were driving in, you know, not the best conditions, there was this real peacefulness. It was almost as though the car was just being carried by spirit, and we were just moving forward in a sense of grace. And so these experiences can start to come more and more to us, whatever our life looks like, that we're being held, that we're being carried. And yeah, I think that the way that we do that fits really beautifully with our topic for today, which is forgiveness. There's the second section in the Song of Prayer pamphlet is what we're going to be talking about today. And it's all about forgiveness. So you want to kick us off with that, Chris?
Absolutely. It's yeah, this is a beautiful example of something that's natural, something that's instinctive, and yet we allow ourselves to get trapped in the machinations of the ego. So supplement Song of Prayer, Part 2, Forgiveness, the introduction. Forgiveness offers wings to prayer to make its rising easy and its progress swift. Without its strong support, it would be vain to try and rise above prayer's bottom step, or even to attempt to climb at all. Forgiveness is prayer's ally, sister in the plan for your salvation. Both must come to hold you up and keep your feet secure, your purpose steadfast and unchangeable. Behold, the greatest help that God ordained to be with you until you reach to him. Illusion's end will come with this. Unlike the timeless nature of its sister, prayer, unlike the timeless nature of its sister prayer, forgiveness has an end, for it becomes unneeded when the rising is done. Yet now it has a purpose beyond which you cannot go, nor have you need to go. Accomplish this, and you have been redeemed. Accomplish this, and you have been transformed. Accomplish this, and you will save the world. And that is definitely very, very illuminating and in no way ambiguous. It's giving us that solid, reinforced slap upside the head. You have got to do this in order to take the next step. And, you know, really, this folds over and becomes a part of that realization of non-duality. So it is so perfect because it gets us back on track with realizing that there's nobody else here and that it's all a journey that we are taking within ourselves. And we have imagined selves along on that journey with us.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that clarity that you're talking about is so beautiful that, you know, sometimes there are these messages in the Course that he basically says, if you just knew this one sentence and could, you know, really live or grok this one sentence, that, you know, you wouldn't need the rest of this, you know, 1,000+ page book. And some of these sentences here, you know, are like that. You know, forgiveness is prayer's ally. And this idea that all we really need to do is forgive. And there's that workbook lesson that really states that forgiveness is our purpose. And to know that, to really know that, okay, it looks like I've got this purpose of paying the bills, of getting to work on time, of feeding the kids, you know, yada, 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 all these different things that seem to be our purpose here. But when we realize that our deeper purpose is actually forgiveness, it does really help us, because it helps us to know that that's what everything is for. You know, that this situation where someone's getting on my nerves, where someone is not doing the thing that I think they need to do, and all of a sudden the temperature is rising within me, to realize that that is for forgiveness. That's what that's there for. It really helps reorient us, and it keeps us steady on our path, which we all need.
Very true. And you made mention of an interesting word there, a little snippet from Stranger in a Strange Land by Mr. Heinlein. And to grope or grok something by his definition was to completely imbibe it, to digest it, to absorb it into your very being. And I think that, you know, that's how we have to look at this. This was all of these teachings that we're working with. We have to go beyond just digesting them. We have to absorb them into the depth of our consciousness.
Yeah, well, that was a great book. I appreciate the translation for our listeners who might not be familiar with that work. But yeah, that's really what we're trying to do. And I think it's also why the Course is a lifelong path, because in order to imbibe, to you know, integrate so deeply into our experience that we are one with it, it can't be done on one reading. You know, it can't be done in one go through. This is something that we continue to return to, and we continue to deepen into. You know, it really is an epic message that Jesus gives through the Course. And instead of trying to bring this massive, beautiful message of the wonder of heaven down to our level, what we need to really do is actually let ourselves open up and expand into its level. And this is a much more significant journey than a lot of us think that it is when we start working with it. So it's really about knowing the grandeur of spirit rather than the ego's, grandiosity, which Jesus also discusses in the text. So
Yes, absolutely. And, we're not just dealing with this lifetime. I think that's important to recognize, is that the healings that you receive in this lifetime are going to alter the way the past unfolded, and are definitely going to influence the way the future unfolds. So we are really doing work that spans all space and time, and consolidates the journey not only for ourselves, but for everyone on the planet or in the cosmos, or however you imagine it to be.
it's true. As Jesus says, the ego's, kind of motto is one or the other. And the Holy Spirit's response is together or not at all. So we are all in this together. We can't be whole with anyone being left out. Oneness wouldn't be complete with some part separate still. So, if any of us ever feel alone, which I'm sure all of us do at different times, we can realize that idea of aloneness is really just the reflection of the ego. And it's not our truth. It's not what we really are. It's not the state that is our perfection that underlies all of this form. So we just need to be willing to keep handing our experiences of pain or suffering over to spirit, because that's how they get shifted. That's how we come into this deeper state that we at first just read about, but eventually we start to actually live our lives from. And that's the payoff that the Course promises us and is inevitable as we work with its teachings.
Yes, it is a magnificent journey to an astonishing awakening, because we diminish ourselves so much as we are invested in all the things that our ego is trying to make sure that we are caught up in. But when we step back from that small parade of chaos and tragedy and settle into a sense of being this munificent and unlimited state of being, it alters the way that we understand life in general, and that contributes again to everybody's being lifted up.
It's true. It's true. And I think another point that's helpful to bring here is that the people on this linear perspective of time and space do not all find their enlightenment simultaneously in time. But what happens is, as each of us do reach that state on our journey, we step outside of time. So even though in a linear sense it does seem to happen, this person woke up, this person woke up, that's kind of what it looks like. What really is happening is collectively we are awakening from the dream as one. And that's why Jesus says, when he's speaking about his resurrection, that you were there with me. He says that we were there with him when he arose, because he realized that this wasn't happening. It's never a physical body that wakes up. It's really the mind that wakes up from the belief that it is a physical body. And so once it steps out of that form, that's the expansive, abstract truth that we really are. Again, it's kind of hard to put a name on or to describe, because it is beyond what we can conceive of. It's beyond what the mind can cook up. But that's also the good news, that what we really are is so much beyond what we can imagine, that it really is a wondrous thing when we can step into that state of being.
Very true. And so as we move forward here, we're looking at forgiveness of yourself. So you want to start rolling on that one?
All right. No gift of heaven has been more misunderstood than has forgiveness. It has, in fact, become a scourge. a curse where it was meant to bless, a cruel mockery of grace, a parody upon the holy peace of God. Yet those who have not yet chosen to begin the steps of prayer cannot but use it thus. Forgiveness is kindness, is obscure at first, because salvation is not understood, nor truly sought for. What was meant to heal is used to hurt, because forgiveness is not wanted. Guilt becomes salvation, and the remedy appears to be a terrible alternative to life. So as Jesus explains here, as we start this journey, we're still very wedded to the ego thought system. And a part of us says, well, I want peace. Yeah, I want peace. I want happiness. I want truth. I want joy. I want love. And then our ego self is like screaming in our ear, don't do it. Don't do it. we need judgment. We need sin. We need, pain. We need suffering. We need other people to be our scapegoats, and these thoughts are, again, consciously, when I say it, it seems silly, but this is the dynamic that unfolds. There's a part of us that really wants the truth and wants the love, and there's a part of us that says, no way, Jose, we're not going there. And that's what Jesus is basically saying, that even though we think we want salvation, he says it's not truly sought for. You don't really want this. At least not wholly yet. A right-minded part of you is realizing this is your true goal, but the wrong mind is still very much attached to suffering in all its different forms.
Yes, and it's very much like a communion, because you can identify, a situation, a circumstance, an individual, and profess forgiveness. But then it pops up somewhere else almost immediately. Somebody cuts you off in traffic. I mean, there are all these random, chaotic events that we encounter throughout the day, and 90% of them are designed to keep us in a state of not really implementing forgiveness like we are being asked to. It keeps us in this buffered state where we kind of toss it out there. Oh yeah, I forgive you, and then we're back to our usual madness. So we really have to be alert as to how we're identifying forgiveness and whether or not we're chasing it from one lily pad to another without really fully investing in the depths of forgiveness.
Yeah, which again just leads back to this idea that this is a path that takes repetition, that we need to be persistent and patient with ourselves, realizing that we are afraid. A part of us really doesn't want to learn this course. It really doesn't want the peace of God. And if we can be okay with that, if we can acknowledge that and see that, what happens is we get better at being kind with ourselves when the forgiveness opportunity comes and we're saying to it, I'm not choosing love right now. I mean, I know I'm supposed to be unconditionally kind, but you don't deserve it, buddy. So we realize that's where we are, and then we start stepping back from that.
Exactly, and this is a good time for all of us as far as implementing our practice of forgiveness, because you cannot turn on television or encounter a social site on the web or read a newspaper without being inflamed over something. I mean, we have really created the perfect world to reinforce all of the arguments that the ego has about those evil people out there. So,
well, they are really evil. That's the problem.
yes, that's true, but somehow composting them just doesn't seem right. At least not yet.
Okay. All right. Yeah, the forgiveness thing. That's what we're talking about. Okay, right. I'm supposed to be loving.
Exactly. Although, we can't forget that magnificent duet between Audrey 2 and Seymour when he makes a statement, the guy looks like plant food to me. So you got to pick up a copy of The Little Shop of Horrors and put that in your CD player or your video player, because it's got a lot of Course in Miracles insights in there for you, and I think you'll probably grow a lot as a result of just that one magnificent movie.
It's been a long time, but that is a classic. Rick Moranis and Steve Martin. It's a great movie.
Yes. Well, moving forward here, we have section or paragraph 2. Forgiveness to destroy will therefore suit the purpose of the world far better than its true objective, and the honest means by which this goal is reached. Forgiveness to destroy will overlook no sin, no crime, no guilt that it can seek and find and love, in parentheses. Dear to its heart is error, and mistakes loom large and grow and swell within its sight. It carefully picks out all evil things and overlooks the loving as a plague, a hateful thing of danger and of death. Forgiveness to destroy is death, and thus it sees in all it looks upon and hates. God's mercy has become a twisted knife that would destroy the Holy Son he loves. So when we are engaged in that very social type of forgiveness that we find plastered all over the internet, there's a good chance that underneath that, the level of condemnation runs very bloody and very deep, and we have to be willing to lift that blanket also and peer under there and see what it is that's motivating our forgiveness.
It's true. I mean, this section starts off with some really beautiful things, and then he kind of dives into like some heavy stuff here, overlooks the loving as a plague, hateful thing of danger. God's mercy has become a twisted knife. Oof. And it's like, this is rough stuff. But what he's really saying is, like you just said, Chris, a lot of people say, well, I forgive you, but they're still holding the daggers in their eyes, they're still wanting the vengeance. And we need to look at this kind of thing so that we can realize it's really just a pitfall, and we don't want to fall into this pit. We want to step around it and realize that it's not our goal. And he also says it's kind of inevitable that we're going to do this at the beginning, that we're going to try to think loving and forgiving thoughts while we still really deep down, want their death and destruction. And the work really just becomes on acknowledging the darkness, acknowledging those heavy feelings, acknowledging the anger and the fear, and not condemning ourselves for those, but allowing them to come forward, allowing them to be seen at least by Jesus. We don't necessarily need to voice all these things with the people that are challenging us, but within we need to let them come forward, and then we can actually be more truly loving and more truly forgiving. But we can't do that by just pushing those feelings away and hiding them from our sight.
Yeah, suppression is one of the most non-productive things you can engage in. So you do have to bring it to the surface. And like you said, you don't have to post it on social media all over the place and wallow in it. But it is good to bring it out and to let some light shine into it, because that's the only way that it can be reconciled.
Yeah, as they say, light is the best disinfectant. So, hiddenness is always of the ego. So if we're hiding something, there's always some sort of tension or anxiety around that. There's always some sort of, does this feel right kind of sense to it. So we just really want to be really clear about our intentions as we're making choices, and how do we come from love the most in this situation? And if we're willing to ask ourselves that question, I think we're often guided into what would be the best option.
Well, very true.
So,
And
yeah, maybe I'll read one more paragraph here?
yeah, you're up to number 3.
Okay. So speaking of this sort of hateful kind of forgiveness, he says, would you forgive yourself for doing this? Then learn that God has given you the means by which you can return to him in peace. Do not see error. Do not make it real. Select the loving and forgive the sin by choosing in its place the face of Christ. How otherwise can prayer return to God? He loves his Son. Can you remember him and hate what he created? You will hate his Father if you hate the Son he loves. For as you see the Son, you see yourself, and as you see yourself is God to you. So again, that message is very beautiful, that we can't see anyone differently. So if we're upset with ourselves, we're actually upset with God, and we're upset with everyone in our lives. And if we're upset with someone else, we're upset with ourselves, we're upset with God. This really emphasizes how we are all one, and how we think of our brothers, how we think of ourselves. So it helps us to realize we want to be pretty aware of what we're thinking, because we don't want to just dump on ourselves by being upset with other people, because that's actually what we're doing on a deeper level when we're judging someone else.
Exactly, and it's reinforcing this sense of reality, that this world is real. And I think that's probably the most distracting part of it. The more you believe this world to be real, the more you are going to be engaged in condemnation and self-defense and attack and all of the other tools that we use to survive on this lower level of consciousness. So really the challenge then is to not only look at it from the level of forgiveness, but to take the next step and to recognize the non-reality of the whole thing. It was a movie you were watching, you got caught up in the plot, but the truth is, it was still a movie. And all of the actors are now, on the beach celebrating, having given good performances and kicking back with a couple of margaritas and enjoying the sun.
I like that image. And before, when you said, about condemnation, I kind of thought, well, is that the nation that we live in? Condemnation. That's maybe that's where we are.
Actually, we live in condemnation.
Okay.
Because we are getting out of control with the population.
Well, I'm in favor of safe sex practices, so.
Well, I think we've kind of delved into this particular subject quite nicely, and that gives us a lot to work with for our next communication here, because it looks like we'll probably end up having 3 different episodes out of this one subject. And
yeah, it goes pretty deep here, and I think it's really good stuff. So yeah, I look forward to that. And I know before our next gathering, or next week when we are sharing again, is Independence Day here in the United States. So I think it's a nice symbol for us all as we kind of go into our lives to think about like true independence. And true independence is freedom from fear and suffering. And that this is the kind of independence that we want. And it is actually something that we can achieve. So I think as we go into this Independence Day, that we can think a little bit more about living that way, about finding ourselves more and more free from the ego and from suffering.
Absolutely. And, you don't have to wrap yourself up in a flag to celebrate Independence Day. You can get out there and feed the hungry. That might be a good thing to do, is to liberate a few people from their ongoing illusion of hunger. So roast a few hot dogs and get out there and share them on the street, and you'll probably feel even more independent and more a part of something that's bigger than anything you imagined that you could be a part of.
Well, that sounds pretty good, man. I like that idea.
Well, I'll see you next week, and hopefully we'll all survive the AK-47s that will be fired off on July 4th, because we are in Chicago.
Yeah, it's a special kind of fireworks we have here in our densely populated urban area. So
Yes, it gets very confusing, but you know, the best thing is to stay close to home, and you know, don't sit on the front porch.
all right. Well, I wish you a happy, healthy, and safe 4th too, Chris, and I'll look forward to talking with you next week.
Sounds awesome. Bye.
All right. Bye.